Hello and welcome to Westmapod, the Christie Time podcast about Agatha Christie's secret identity. I'm Mark Aldridge. I research and write about Agatha Christie a lot, including for my books about Poirot and Marple, which is now out in paperback, and my forthcoming The Swinging Christie's book, which is co-written with...
Who? Oh, me! I'm the special bonus Grey Robert Brown, and I'm a writer and a Christie fan, and this is a special bonus episode of Westmapod about Mary Westmacott, which is about the special bonus version of A Daughter's a Daughter,
Yes.
Which we discussed last time, which is the play version of
Indeed.
A Daughter's a Daughter.
I love that for once we actually managed to think about the fact that that might be too much for one episode, so let's split that topic off into another, rather than just going, you will have 2.5 hours and be happy with it.
So we talked about, obviously neither of us have a daughter, but we do both have sisters, lovely sisters. I thought we could talk about our sisters at the top of the episode.
That's a good idea.
I'm a big fan of your sister.
Yes.
Jo, hi, if you're listening.
Hi, Jo.
My sister Hannah is pretty iconic as well.
Yes, I've not met Hannah.
You've not met Hannah?
No, I've only met your mum once.
Yeah, you spent quite a lot of time with my mum that day, though. She came to the recording. Anyway, this is not about mums.
No.
This isn't a mum's a mum. This is a sister's a sister discussion point.
Because my sister, I think I've mentioned before, is the influence for my thing I say in Agatha Christie on screen, which is that you don't have to have read Agatha Christie to be an Agatha Christie fan, because my sister loves the adaptations. She loves going to Greenway. She loves all the sort of ephemera
stuff around it.
Yeah, but although she did tell me only a few weeks ago that she was about to read her first Agatha Christie.
Oh,
she is a reader, but not. She's very into very contemporary crime stuff. That's what she's like, more thrillery things.
Nice,
I think, than mystery.
It's interesting, the different relationship. Yeah, because I guess Hannah's similar. I mean, Hannah has read a fair few Christies, and she would watch, she watched Towards Zero or whatever, but she's obviously not as much of a geek about it as I am. But she reads a lot of, she's a teacher, an English teacher. Because she's a very good English teacher, she concerns herself a lot with what the kids are reading, which I think is a sign, especially in this reading crisis, is super important, because it's important we nurture the next generation of readers, because they'll be Christie readers. Yeah. And also it's funny, isn't it? Because I mean, when we were kids, the kids that are the age that Hannah teaches, 14-ish, 15, that's what we read. We went on to Christie and Little Women and Catcher in the Rye and The Bell Jar and things like that. Whereas I think now that YA exists as a genre in such a big way, that's what they're reading now, and maybe coming to Christie a bit later.
Yeah, I would have devoured
but still coming
that.
to Christie.
Yeah, all the YA stuff. I know that I would have just loved it.
Yeah,
because I was just so desperate for stuff that was more
interesting. But then maybe you wouldn't then have hit on Christie at such a formative era. Maybe we wouldn't be here right now, Mark.
Oh my God. What would we be doing?
I like to think that we're in a very small way contributing to the fight back against the national reading crisis and the global reading crisis by encouraging people to read Christie and read Mary Westmacott in particular.
And read our book.
Oh, and if you're still not done reading, there's a really great book, and we've been very careful to make sure that it's suitable for not great attention spans, because it's not going to be over long either.
No.
It's going to be quite punchy.
Very punchy, yes.
We worked really hard on that.
So The Swinging Christies, How Agatha Christie Conquered the 1960s. Such a good word, conquered.
I love saying it.
Yeah,
Conquered. Yes, pre-order now.
Yeah. A Daughter's a Daughter is the story of Anne Prentice and her daughter Sarah. Anne has been widowed for many years, and while Sarah is out of the picture, Anne meets a man, Richard Caulfield. The two quickly fall in love, but when Sarah returns, she and Richard take an instant and vehement disliking to each other. Anne is caught between her love for Richard and her love for her daughter. And this time it's played out on stage.
You're proud of that one.
I really am. I did think about whether I wanted to write a new synopsis for this one, and I was like, no, I just think that made me laugh.
Well, a sign of how a new synopsis was not necessary
really
is how close an adaptation the book is from the play.
Yes.
It's so similar, and to the extent where it's quite easy to point out what's different because there's so little. But we'll get on to that. In terms of context then, the play is first performed in 1956.
Yes, very briefly. So it was written in the late 1930s as an Agatha Christie play. So according to Julius Green, who's obviously the expert in these matters because he wrote a book all about Agatha Christie's plays, but the earliest version of the typescript seems to be from 1939. So we can be pretty sure that she wrote it just sort of leading up to that point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't staged at that point. It was staged in 1956.
She did try and stage it, didn't she?
She did, but 1939, not a brilliant time, and also not the sort of play that people were looking for. Because at that point, it was written as an Agatha Christie. So Mary Westmacott existed, was still a secret, but there was an idea that this might be staged as an Agatha Christie. But as so often happens, just the stars did not align for it. There's no big sort of scandal behind it.
No, and then you move on. She had other things to write and she was busy. And I like to say she latterly Osborned herself by Charles Osborne.
Oh, yes, of course.
Who novelised some of Christie's plays in the 90s?
Yes, in the 90s,
as she novelised it herself in the book that we talked about last episode, which is on your feeds if you haven't heard it.
Yeah. So it finally did get performed in 1956. So this is during Agatha Christie's theatrical renaissance, that she has written for the stage for a long time. But the 50s, you've got your Witness for Prosecution, Spider's Web, Mousetrap. She's really on a roll. So it makes sense that you might be thinking about other stuff that you might want to stage. And she's clearly wanting to do different things with Verdict, which is not a murder mystery. That is also not a success, but she's trying out other stuff.
And crucially, this is 4 years after it did come out as a novel. So people know it as a Mary Westmacott novel when it finally comes as a Agatha Christie play, which is, I know, as you said, she wrote it under the name Agatha Christie originally, the play script, but it is an interesting choice that, was it not billed as a Mary?
It isn't billed, so now it's billed as a Mary Westmacott
play.
Yeah.
But because the secret's out, I guess people know that that's Agatha Christie. It's an interesting, probably more than any other title, it brings Agatha and Mary together just because of this provenance.
Definitely. So it's only running for a week in Bath, so not in the West End or anything. It's just a tryout. Apparently, according to Julius, was very well attended, but as he points out, it's effectively a new Agatha Christie play because people know Mary Westmacott is Agatha Christie, but it was under the Mary Westmacott name.
I wanted to myth bust about Rosalind.
Yeah, I did, because
we talked about the potential, although, take everything with a pinch of salt, autobiographical allusions within a book inevitably called, and a play inevitably called A Daughter's a Daughter and her daughter Rosalind. But
so I was going through some of the family archive stuff, and some of the most interesting stuff I find is often from like the 90s, because often people will say, oh, we've always done this because of this, but we're going to do it like this instead.
And of course, the forthcoming podcast, The Naughty 90s, all about Agatha Christie in the 90s.
Hey, look, I'm not ruling anything out. We're never going to go the easy route for our projects.
The easy 80s? No, the electric 80s.
The electric 80s.
Sorry. So there's a rumour that Rosalind suppressed the play.
Yes.
There has been a rumour for many years.
It's on the Wikipedia page for it.
Really?
So, yeah.
That's bad. But you're here to myth
there's so much that's wrong with those Wikipedia pages. So, yes, this idea that she had Rosalind, because Rosalind owned it, because the Westmacotts were not owned by Agatha Christie Limited, so she owns these personally. But actually, if you think about it, firstly, this isn't a natural choice for a revival anyway.
No.
There's lots of crime-based Agatha Christie's that you would, as like a touring production or a revival, you go to first. Yeah. But I did note that in 2000, so actually beyond the 90s, a producer wrote to Rosalind to ask about staging the play, because there was a run in Westcliff where they basically staged all of Agatha Christie's plays, which was incredible. And I wish I'd been there, but I was 18 and poor and a student, so there's no chance for me. And actually, he wrote to Rosalind to say that he hadn't been able to get hold of a copy of the play, and so asked if he could get a copy of the script. And Rosalind was very happy to send him a copy and said, I am quite happy for it to be produced if you think it is worthwhile. It is very sentimental, particularly the end, but it is probably better off as a play than as a book. So if that isn't someone being very happy for it to be staged, I don't know what else you could ask for.
Fair
really.
enough, yeah. That's a great insight, actually. In terms of what's going on historically around the point at which the play does finally debut in 1956, so we're only a few years on from the last episode in 52.
a lot obviously going on in society. We're still in the 1950s where so much is changing. One of your favourite topics, I would say, the Cambridge spies, Guy Burgess and Donald Maclean, they both appear in Moscow, like confirming effectively that that's where they'd fled to and that's what had gone on.
Yeah.
You're chatting about, is it related to this year? Or
It is.
So I don't know, but a couple of people have asked me what your Agatha Christie Festival talk is this year, and I've just said, read the blurb, because I don't actually know any more than is in it. We haven't chatted about it.
Well, so it's called The Mysterious Case of Roger Stiles. Tickets are available now for Agatha Christie Festival in September this year, 2026. So one of the most notorious spies is on the run. He needs an alias quickly. Where does he turn but Agatha Christie? He turns to his nearby copies of The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which is, of course, Agatha Christie's first published novel, and one of her most famous, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I'm saying no more. You'll have to come along and find out.
I will have to come along.
I guess
I'll be in the area.
And you're doing a solo talk as well. And we should say we're doing a live episode together, as is now traditional for the Swinging Christies, which is called The Pale Caribbean Mirror Cracked, which is a mashup episode about adaptations of The Pale Horse, A Caribbean Mystery, and The Mirror Cracked that are all from the 80s and 90s. Obviously, those books were published in the 60s, which we talk about on our other podcast. But these are the Electric 80s and Naughty 90s adaptations.
Yeah.
And then what are you talking about? Solo.
So I'm chatting about Agatha Christie films. I'm saying 100 years, a century. It's not quite a century, but it just, if you squint, it's a century of Agatha Christie films. But what I thought I'd do was lean into the more obscure stuff. So things that adaptations that people might have forgotten or might not know about.
Oh, cool.
And show some nice clips and just a nice little chat about that.
Because, I mean, I've read your Agatha Christie on Screen book several times at this point, but there's still occasionally you'll be like, I don't know, that version of Passing of Mr. Quinn or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that existed. And there's of course, because everything's in that book, there's an entry about it in that book, but you forget because we talk so much about the big hitters.
And some of them are more recent than you might think, but we'll chat.
Yeah. In terms of what else is going on, we're still sort of coming out of the Second World War. You said that the regeneration of the Barbican in London is announced this year.
Which is very telling, isn't it? Because it's regeneration in terms of saying, because the Barbican includes the Barbican Theatre, as well as flats and stuff. But it's telling that even in this post-war, people love films, television's arrived, but theatre is really central, and theatre's modern, right? It's going to be part of this modern building
and housed in these, in concrete walls, and absolutely. And this is following its near destruction in the Blitz, as you wrote in our notes, and we talked a lot last time about how urban A Daughter's a Daughter is in a way that the other Westmacotts aren't. How it's solely London set and how it's very post-war. Interestingly, so the play Christie rewrote to update it. Is that correct? Because it's no longer set in the late 30s. It's set explicitly between 45 and 49.
Yes.
So that immediate post-war period, which is exactly the moment that The Rose and the Yew Tree, the last Mary Westmacott novel, is all about, is that exact turning point at the end.
Imagine if Sarah had fled to St. Lou or something in between.
Yeah, it does.
And then came back and like, you won't believe the sort of people I met.
I've been doing drugs all over St. Lou. Yeah, it is. It does feel like that story, the stories exist concurrently, which we've never had with the Westmacotts before quite in the same way. They've all kind of had their own identities within they've all felt like they have a particular moment, even if they span a great period of years. People being demobbed is mentioned. There's a mention of textile rationing, which I asked you to check if it's in the book as well, and it isn't. So this is uniquely anchoring the play to this particular post-war period in a way that the book is probably set in a point at which rationing still exists, but not textile rationing, because textile rationing only runs until 49, which is when the last scene of the play takes place.
Yes, with lovely plastic curtains, isn't it?
Oh yeah. No, thank you.
You can almost feel the sort of like the heat that would come off them. They were trapped in that.
If there's a radiator underneath them, they go up in flames.
Yes.
And Laura says the character of Lady Laura, which is our kind of older Wildean, Oscar Wildean sort of matriarch figure who comes in with her non-sequiturs.
Non-sequiturs.
Just because I'm so stuck on flowers. Non-sequiturs. She says our generation has something that this generation, meaning Sarah's generation, hasn't got. The young people, stability, solid earth under their feet, and that is, very much a post-war feeling. Although it's also a feeling that the generation immediately after the First World War and the Boer War may well have had, and that speaks to, I think we mentioned this last time, but how the Westmacott span all three of those seismic wars. And when Christie updates her stories, often, I said this last time, she could literally just swap out a war because the wars change, but the strife continues, sort of thing.
I noted also that John Osborne's Look Back in Anger debuted the same year, because in some ways that couldn't be more different to A Daughter's a Daughter, which, as I said, is a bit old-fashioned in some ways, whereas Look Back in Anger is very modern, very much about the modern working class man and their place in society and how things might be changing for different generations, trying to find happiness in the way that the world has changed. But actually, those themes are sort of the same. It's still about Sarah saying, well, now what do I do? Actually, the world is changing. For her, the world includes her mother.
Yeah.
And it's what would make her happy. What compromises and sacrifices do you make for that? So I think they're all tapping into similar ideas about the pursuit of happiness, but also sacrifices, and just looking at them in slightly different lenses.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's nice to exist in a moment where John Osborne is at the coalface of like modern liberal thinking. Because when I was doing research for certain sections of the book where we talk about contemporary plays, by the late 60s, Osborne's gone a bit reactionary and he's a bit grumpy about like peace and love movements and stuff like that, which is not that far. It's only 10 years difference, really. But it's funny how he's kind of more cutting edge than Christie or Westmacott here. But then by the end of the 60s, I would argue that Passengers Frankfurt is more nuanced than some of the stuff that Osborne is saying and writing around that period about, moaning about young people, basically. He's a bit Lady Matilda from Passengers Frankfurt by that point, whereas Christie is at least entertaining a broader church of ideas. So, yeah.
Even though the war has gone, people don't have stability. And the Suez crisis this year really sums that up. That might not be, the type of wars that people lived through 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier, but it's showing that actually things are still changing, that you don't know that you can have these sort of flashpoints of where actually, whether it's fuel, food, whatever, things that can be suddenly unavailable or things can change, and the whole way that society operates just due to one conflict.
Yeah, I was re-listening to the introduction episode recently because we dropped it not that long ago from the point at which we're recording. Peek behind the curtain, dear listener. But we made the point there that we always say one of the reasons why we talk about the 60s in the Swinging Christies is because it's such an interesting, turbulent time. But the years 1930 to 1956, which is the period in which Agatha Christie, quote unquote, exists as Mary Westmacott, is also super turbulent. I mean, that's why we were drawn to it as our kind of next discussion point.
Yes.
In terms of what Agatha Christie is publishing and what's premiering around this time.
So The Burden, the final Mary Westmacott book, is coming out the same year, 1956.
Is there a bit of cross-promotion there?
No, not at all.
Because Bath is so brief and small.
Yes, no, not at all.
But it's funny, we've not had that much Westmacott activity in 1 year before.
Yeah, when you think that way back in 1930 as Giant's Bread, they're very spaced out, really.
Yeah.
In the way that they're presented. So, but Agatha Christie, which is Mary Westmacott's other identity you may have heard of, she publishes Hickory Dickory Dock in 1955. Dead Man's Folly is this year's Christie for Christmas, or in fact, it's the first one publicised as such widely. And then next year it will be 450 from Paddington.
Which it suddenly occurred to me when I saw you'd written that in our notes. I think there's an interesting reading of 450 from Paddington with there's the three fascinating female figures in 450 from Paddington which pass the baton of the story. So you've got Mrs. McGillicuddy, and then you've got Miss Marple, and then you've got Lucy Aylesbury. And we've talked about them on the Swinging Christies because they all get merged into Margaret Rutherford. Yeah. She gets all three parts. Yeah. She's so brilliant and sort of can't be contained by the story. She has to take it all. But there's something, I don't know, there's something about Lady Laura and Sarah, and that there is almost, certainly between Miss Marple and Lucy, there's almost a maternal relationship. She's like her protege. You could see a world in which Lucy became Miss Marple's protege in novels after that. Yes. Sadly, she doesn't. But
do you know that the ITV Marple series did briefly pitch the idea of a Lucy Aylesbury spin-off?
Is that in your book?
Yeah.
I'm half remembering that when I say that, yeah.
And some of the reviews of 450 from Paddington said that they thought she was being lined up as a replacement.
Who played Lucy in that?
I think it's Amanda Holden.
Oh, is it? Is it?
Yeah.
And Alan Carr could be her sidekick.
Oh my God, it's all coming together.
And they could solve crimes in Greece.
Yeah.
We should pitch this.
Oh wow, we should. On stage, Agatha's having her illustrious decade. So, Mousetrap 52, Witness to the Prosecution 53, Spider's Web in 1954, which I just think is so funny because that could not be more different to A Daughter's a Daughter.
Yeah.
Because it's this big farce and lots of plot things happening.
Yeah.
Which compared to the sort of character study of A Daughter's a Daughter, the quietness of it is very, very different.
Although, doesn't a stepdad get soft in that?
Yeah, so, well, there you go.
It's the funny alternate version of A Daughter's a Daughter is if Sarah did for Richard and then chucked him in a cupboard or a priest hole.
The same year as A Daughter's a Daughter play is Towards Zero, which was not a success. But 2 years later, Verdict is also not a success, but it is almost Westmacott-ish. So that's quite interesting.
It's one of those titles that float around, isn't it? Like Endless Night.
Yes.
Like Within a Wall.
Yes.
What else have we talked about? While the Light Lasts, that are sort of, if you squint, they went out as Agatha Christie's, but you could see them going out under the Mary Westmacott name.
I did put a list together when we began this project of Westmacott-ish Agatha Christie titles. Maybe we'll come to them one day.
Maybe. If look, to be frank, we talked about potentially doing some bonus episodes in the future about Westmacott-ish titles. If we suddenly get inundated by requests to do those, then I guess that will force our hand. So if you really want to hear those, then write in. What did the critics say about A Daughter's a Daughter play?
So the stage described it as having a nice workmanlike plot and some unusual angles and has much to commend it. Bristol Evening Post was less sure, thought that it was too long, and the producer Maurice Jones also performed in it and apparently was apt to forget his lines.
Oh, who did he play? He played Richard Caulfield.
Oh, well, there you go. I suppose it has to be, unless he was particularly
That's
young.
bad. That's quite a prominent role to forget your lines.
Yeah.
We'll come back onto that. We'll come back onto the doubling as well. He may have played more than one role, actually. Let's track the differences then, the main differences between the novel and the play, because like I say, there's not many of them, so we can probably cover off most of them.
I like to, in my notes, I've written minimal in capital letters with an exclamation mark at the back.
You've taken some of my exclamation marks out of the bookmark, so how dare you put some in these episode notes?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I wanted to look at, because I'd never really done a comparison before, I thought, I wonder how those acts are structured in the play, like where are the act breaks? And then I was like, it's exactly the same as the book. The book the novel's in 3 books or 3 parts. And it's exactly the same, but there is that extended opening, which is one of the biggest things. But in terms of the actual structure of what happens in each act, it's really the same.
Yeah.
I do have a Westmore confession to make, which is that when Julius Green staged this play as a rehearsed reading at the festival a few years ago, the first thing is that I had been in a rehearsed reading at the Agatha Christie conference. No. Yeah. Who did I play?
Sarah.
No.
Oh, but your painted nails look so lovely in bright red.
Who did I play?
Dame Laura.
No, that was Sophie
Hannah. I don't know. Basil.
Yes!
Of course.
Yes, camp spiteful Basil.
Yes. Yes. Who moves a bit like a insect.
So,
well, you trot, actually.
I had...
more like a farmyard animal sort of trotting.
Was obviously therefore quite aware.
Very terribly short legs. Or like a sausage dog, sort of.
That it... Of how we felt when it was read out, which was that we all agreed that it was a good play and very interesting, but I think we also all agreed, I remember talking to Sophie afterwards, that it was too long and too repetitive, especially towards the end. I've
just realised that in these notes you've written, Basil is a breath of fresh air. I thought you meant within the plot as a character, but you're just praising your own performance.
I just want more lines.
You're just saying, Basil was such a fresh air in that reading, wasn't he? You're just saying you did a good job.
He's only got like 6 lines or something. That's why, because Julius did ask me to reprise the role, but I wasn't
for
available.
The West End.
For the West End. So anyway, it is really repetitive, and I remember Sophie saying every time I came back as Dame Laura, it did feel a bit like I was saying the same things, which towards the end it is a bit like that.
But you were pointing out, and you're right, that you need the characters of Basil and Dame Laura to and Laura to punctuate. It's the camp fun that the story needs. It's also what gives it that slightly wider sort of London set feel, which contributes to my thesis about there being something Bloomsbury going on there. And the thing that made me think of Memento Mori, which I mentioned as a recommendation off the back of this book in the last episode.
And I felt that with Dame Laura, I want her to go further. Like, I want her to be the full Lady Bracknell, whereas I think that she just doesn't quite get to be that, I guess, camp icon that I want her to be. She's almost a bit too straightforward, and I want her to be funnier. I want her to be more of a personality than she is.
To be clear, you're not critiquing Sophie's.
No, not at all. But the characters in the play, I want you to be like, it's a Dame Laura scene.
And so we mentioned the main additional material that the book adds that isn't in the play is the waving goodbye at Victoria Station scene at the beginning, and then I spoke about last time, and then moving around the city and having all these emotions swirling. And I do think that's a beautifully written opening, and it is a shame that that's not in the play. Obviously, in the way that Christie writes, the sort of play that she writes, and the sort of a play that was staged at that time, to literally mount, Victoria Station or something in any kind of meaningful way wouldn't. Nowadays, you do it in a more abstract way, but that's not really the sort of play that Christie wrote, especially not in the late 30s. But it means that we start at the point at which Sarah is almost back in the play, which does throw you into action quicker.
But also, I think that really affects the sort of texture of it, because it means that does make it feel more repetitive, because you're almost kicking off with the same sort of scene we're going to see a lot
throughout. You're right. I would argue that I think the padding in the book, or the padding is inherently critical. I guess the additional material should have been the bit where Sarah and Anne are both kind of out on the town razzling. Because that's the point at which they're both kind of losing who they are. They've gone down this path that's not quite right. Anne probably shouldn't have given up Richard, or maybe she should have. I don't know. She feels very conflicted about it. Sarah's getting into the wrong crowd and the wrong sorts of things. And that's the stuff that we should have added to the book.
Imagine a chapter that was Laura and Anne going out for dinner and in a sort of slightly boisterous place, and they're chatting, they're talking about how worried they are at Sarah, and these terrible people clearly doing drugs and getting very drunk in the corner, and they're like, this isn't our sort of place, we're going to have to leave. And just as they leave, they see that Sarah is in the middle of that crowd. How much stronger is that?
Don't do drugs, kids. Absolutely right. You really do kind of struggle to find that many divergences between the versions. She spells Jerry differently.
So I think this is quite interesting.
Okay.
Because when this was revived, when it was staged many years after it was supposed to be first staged, Agatha did update it. So lots of different references to things like how you spoke about servants in particular and things like that. No big substantial changes, but some tweaks. And Jerry, of course, in the Second World War had become slang for the Germans. I think that she just was originally spelling it with a G.
Yeah.
And then kept it for the play because why bother to change it? And then when she wrote the novel, changed it to a J so that when you...
No, you're right. How do you spell Jerry if you're talking derogatory?
With a G.
Well, I guess that makes sense. I've seen it with a J as well.
Maybe it is just
a
coincidence.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, the Moving Finger, the Joan Hickson does the same thing. They spell Jerry differently.
Well, and Christie spells names differently within her own typescript sometimes. But yeah, I can see that being just because she doesn't want someone to be thrown by it because it means something different by that point. Yeah. No, that's interesting. So these aren't changes between the play version and the book. What they are, though, are you have a different relationship with it if you're reading it as opposed to seeing it.
Definitely.
Right? Any story adapted, you just inherently do. One of those ways that you might have a different relationship is the fact that you're literally looking at an actor. Doubling is very common in the theatre, and indeed at the front of this play, you're invited to, which may not have been written by Christie, probably wasn't specified by Christie, would have been the producer.
You mean
the
the stuff at the beginning that says about how to stage
who
it
you could double?
Yeah, no, that wouldn't have been.
Probably been added.
She does sometimes write it in her. I think there's one in Witness for the Prosecution about a secretary that can double for someone else.
Oh, okay.
But no, generally not.
So this may not come from Christie herself, but you're invited to double Jerry with Lawrence.
That's crazy.
But fascinating because then you've got one of the narrative points is that Jerry and Lawrence represent very different love interests for Sarah.
I would find that so confusing.
It would be confusing, especially because you're invited to think how different they are, but you're essentially seeing Sarah with the same actor twice. Or Basil, who performs, although that makes sense on a practical level because, as you said, Basil isn't really in it much, but they occupy very different narrative spaces. That's someone who's supposed to be, a straight love interest who's very much part of the main plot versus a B plot, completely different character. Maybe that's why it would work, because an actor can be so different that it's obvious that it's not the same person. Or Richard with Lawrence, which is really bizarre because that's then Sarah objecting to the same actor who she will then go out with. Yeah. And the idea that the Richard actor is then playing that scene where Lawrence is...
Oh, yes, the very sexualized scene.
That's really uncomfortable. Maybe feeds into the sort of... There is a sort of psychosexual undercurrent. I guess you could read like Sarah and Richard's relationship as twisted in that way. Maybe it plays into that reading.
Well, that's interesting, though, that both might also be Basil.
Yeah.
Because I was confused. I mean, that's why I was... to do that funny little reading, because you're not going to bring an actor in.
Sorry, listener, we will get Mark off the topic of his own personal theatrical successes soon. He's just adamant that he will make the whole podcast about his starring role. Have I ever talked about my starring role as Gavroche in Les Miserables? Oh, I made so many people cry.
I bet they did.
Set you up for that one.
But I was confused even at the time as to, much as I love, the character popping up and giving it some life, why on earth you would do that and just give him so little to do? On a purely practical sense, it doesn't really make sense. And I guess you could double them up. My previous presumption had been that whoever played Basil would understudy all of the other male actors. That would be, which is a hell of a thing. But
it makes more sense for Basil to double with Lawrence because they're both extraneous characters than it does for Richard to double with Lawrence because Richard's a role in and of itself, really.
Yeah.
I talked last time about the incredible flower imagery through A Daughter's a Daughter, which has been something we've been looking at through the Westmacotts, but most specifically in A Daughter's a Daughter. And we're specifically told that Sarah is doing a course in flower decoration, and that's one of the things. Anne decorates the house with flowers when Sarah returns as like a nice welcome, and then Richard brings flowers, and that's an early indicator of their butting of heads. And then I didn't really feel this reading the novel, but you put it on the stage and I was suddenly thinking about Pygmalion and Eliza Doolittle being a flower girl, and how so much of Sarah's story is about being an ingenue in London and then sort of coming out into society, learning to be a woman, learning to be mature and come to terms with her mother in the same way that Eliza is sort of learning how to be a quote-unquote lady. I think there's something in that. I mean, I'm sure Christie would have seen a production of Pygmalion. It's such a staple. It was such a staple even then. And of course, in 10 years' time, well, in 1964, it would become even more culturally significant as the musical My Fair Lady.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly sure that Edith doesn't announce. We talked a bit last time about the changing relationships of service people in this period. I'm sure Edith doesn't announce
No, I don't think she does.
at the door.
No.
But that's a very good thing. That's a very helpful thing for a play, isn't
Yes.
it? To have a character that will go, Richard Coldfield, and then he comes on. That's
Yes.
just easy shorthand that also makes sense in a kind of Edwardian way, which feels slightly out of date.
Very upstairs, downstairs.
Isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, that's not in the novel, but then you don't need it in the same way in the novel.
No, that's true. And there's stuff, I guess, about physical descriptions of what people do too, like walking in and out off the stage. You noted about Richard.
Yeah, so you made the point that the ends of the parts and the ends of the acts correspond completely neatly narratively. But it's funny how the emphasis can be different seeing it played out in front of you rather than reading it.
Mm.
So, for example, when at the end of book 1, Richard walks down the stairs and walks out of her life, and it's like the emphasis is on Richard doing that walk. Literally, that's what you're being told, right?
Yeah.
As a reader. You can't do that on a stage because Richard is walking off stage.
Yes.
And then you're left with the characters on stage.
Yeah.
So instead, at the end of Act 1, what you get is this emphasis on Sarah burying her head in Anne's chest, as the stage directions tell us, and Sarah going, darling, darling, and Anne strokes her hair mechanically, we're told, and her eyes are fixed, staring at the gap that Richard has left because he's exited by that point. So the emphasis on the stage, literally the characters you're watching are Sarah and Anne. I think that changes your relationship between, I think it makes you more sympathetic to them and less sad for Richard. You're more sad for Anne because Anne is the one that's watching. Do you see how even just the practicalities of putting it on the stage changes your relationship to the story? There are elements, I think, I wonder if you agree, of the novel that felt like that works in a play either better or full stop in a way that it doesn't work in a novel.
Yes, and I know that what you're talking about from the notes about the transformation of the flat and that things being moved and Sarah not liking it. Because when I was reading it, I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but when I read it in the novel, I was like, this is a weird thing to fixate on.
Yeah.
But of course it makes sense if you think you're watching it on stage.
If the curtain comes up and the flat looks different, that is saying to the audience, things are different now because we're in Sarah's domain and no longer does Richard have any influence or hold over Anne. He's long gone. When it's described in the novel, I just felt like I know how that was supposed to work on stage in a way that, you're right. And similarly, that's it. I find it quite stagey, that reveal that Richard's coming back into the narrative is we're on the phone and it's like, oh, I didn't quite hear that surname. Can you spell it out? Corn? Is it C-A-U? And that's the reveal that, oh, it's Caulfield because we've joked about cornfield. Cauliflower, she calls him. Sarah calls him quite meanly. But yeah, that felt like an audience would be gripped by that reveal of letters in a way that on the page, it just felt weird that we weren't hearing the other side of the conversation.
Yes. So that's a really
There's a
good
couple
point.
of telephone calls actually in the novel where you don't hear the other side of the conversation and you're like, in a novel you probably would because you can go anywhere in a novel. The perspective is roving in a novel like this in a way that you can't if you're rooted in one flat on the stage in a proscenium arch theatre. And I wanted to just talk about the ending. We sort of teased this last time, that the ending is quite different. So in a slightly melodramatic way, Anne runs to Sarah at the airport in the novel, and then we have this sort of coda where Anne seems to have found peace within herself, right? And she recites that quote the peace of God which passeth all understanding. But I think the ending's sadder in the play because you don't see them physically reunite. They just have a telephone call, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So Anne finds out over the phone that Sarah's going away, and they sort of reconcile. You have Edith comforting Anne together in the way that they're together at the end of the book. But interestingly, the quote, that the peace of God which passeth all understanding, is the last line of the novel. But in the play, she says it, and then she says, "Darling Sarah, God bless her." And I think that changes. I think for me, quoting that, and that's the last line of the novel, feels more I'm at peace and it's conclusive. Whereas to then say, "Darling Sarah, God bless her," I don't know, that feels like to me to emphasize the distance between the two of them and the loss.
Yeah, it's definitely an emphasis. It's that thing about that in a novel, you can practically finish a book with an ellipsis, like, and then we're leaving it hanging. But on stage, you're like,
yes, is that the end?
Yeah. So you got to really, have that.
It has to be a bit more conclusive, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. So tell me about this. Is there a Westmacott stage trilogy?
So this is, courtesy again, Julius Green with his brilliant book all about Agatha Christie's life in theatre. He suggests that you could talk about this, The Lie, which is another play which is on my list of Agatha Christie Westmacottish things, which is about the breakdown of a relationship within a family because, well, one person has a relationship with someone else that they probably shouldn't, but I'm not going to ruin it too much now. But it's very much about family dynamics, let's put it that way. And The Stranger, which is Agatha's early version of Love from a Stranger, the play, which is based on Philomel Cottage. So they are all about sort of people being betrayed in some way. But what I thought was quite interesting is that there is an explicit reference to some of the ideas in Love from a Stranger in particular in this play and book. So for those of you unaware, Philomel Cottage, a short story which then became the Stranger play and then became the play Love from a Stranger, is based on the idea of this couple getting married quite quickly. She has won the pools or the lottery, the French lottery, I think it is, or there's also, or come into an inheritance, depends on which version you're reading. But she's got lots of money and she marries this man quite quickly, and he decides that they're going to go and live in a cottage in the middle of nowhere, and it becomes clear to the audience and reader fairly early on that he's a wrong-un and that he's probably going to murder her for her money. So this
Don't you hate it when that happens?
Oh my goodness. But this is, I feel, a road that this plot almost goes down.
Yeah.
That with Richard, you're like, because they actually go and explicitly tell you, no, that's not the story.
Yeah.
Because Anne says in the novel, I haven't insured my life in his favour. And there is even like a reference to brides in the bath when Lawrence asks about like multiple marriages and she says, oh, there aren't brides in the bath. So you're being told, no, that's not going to be this story. But there is a world where it is like that actually he's a real bad one, Richard.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Is that a caveat that you only need to make because people know that Mary Westmacott is Agatha Christie now?
Well,
it's
I
like
think,
slightly defensive, isn't it? It's like she doesn't have to signpost that in, I don't know, Unfinished Portrait because nobody was any the wiser.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. And also because Love from a Stranger, which is fairly forgotten now, but was a huge hit and played for a really long time. And several films are made of it. And that whole idea of, gaslight is very similar to it as well. Which is obviously not a Christie play, but the films of Gaslight as well as the play were very successful.
Yeah.
So that was like a known trope that you would be on your guard for.
Yeah.
But I think that there's even more that you could say are Mary Westmacott type plays in some way. Verdict, which comes, as I said, I mentioned earlier, but that's not a murder mystery. There is a murder in it, but you know who did it. And it's very psychological. It's very much about dynamics between characters. And even things like Someone at the Window, which is an adaptation of The Dead Harlequin, a short story, the Mr. Quinn short story, which again is not a murder mystery, but there's a murder in it. And it's played out with lots of dynamics. And it also reminded me of lots of Agatha's early plays, when she was a teenager and in her 20s, lots of which haven't been published, but Julius Green gives you a brilliant summary if you want to know more. And Agatha's sister Madge, her play The Claimant, which I read for the first time, did feel quite a daughter's a daughter to me.
Yeah.
In terms of the way it's about relationships, it's got, if anything, I think it's a weaker play. It's not a brilliant play, but it's...
We have to say that because we're loyal to the other sister.
We do, and I think, you know...
sister's a sister.
Yeah, but it has got a really good act break, which I think... This one is a bit more traditional, a daughter's a daughter, whereas Madge was clearly wanting to push the drama a bit more and doing that thing of going, right, okay, we've had people chatting for 35, 40 minutes, someone's going to bring out a gun. And almost literally, that is what happens at the end of one of the acts.
Well, that's what Westmacott / Agatha Christie does in Rose in the Yew Tree.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, we've had some chat. Come on now.
And she might do again, but we'll have a chat about that later. We
always do a little, if you like this, try that. Obviously, this is a play, so we're going to recommend plays. We keep saying that the character of Laura is Wildian, so I think I know what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say Oscar Wilde, obviously, and I think there is a sense of it nearly straying into that, especially the importance of being earnest. So, yes, I think if you want this but elevated and camper, then Oscar Wilde's always the way to go. Anyway.
Yeah. So I'm going to recommend two plays that are really interesting about those kind of generational, the legacy of your parent from the perspective of the child. One is Yerma, which Billie Piper was in maybe a while ago now, but that's a great one for mothers and daughters in particular. And then Baghdadi, which is about a father and daughter. But yeah, in terms of modern playwriting on this topic, I think we always say, who is Mary Westmacott? I think the only thing to say really that this contributes is she's a good playwright, which we've not seen before. And is there an argument to say she's a better playwright than she is a novelist? Do you think the play version is better than the novel?
I think it makes more sense as a play.
Yeah.
I do miss the little prologue at the beginning.
Yeah.
And there was changes I would make to it to make it pacier.
Yeah.
But, Rosalind thought it was better as a play.
I think on balance, I agree with Rosalind.
Yeah.
And you, yeah. Well, please do continue reading along with us. We're so enjoying this journey that we're all going on together. So 2 weeks from today, we're reading the final Westmacott novel, The Burden.
Possibly the most obscure of all of them. I feel that's the one people talk about the least.
Yeah, and I'm reading it now for the second time, so I'm excited to talk about it. Each episode drops every other Tuesday. Do let us know your thoughts. Take pictures of your copies. Send us pictures of where you're reading your copies. If you're reading it on a cliff, in a cathedral, in France.
Getting annoyed with your daughter.
Yeah, beating your daughter over the head with a copy of it. No, don't do that. I don't endorse that. We'll do a mailbag in the Reflections episode, so we'll hoover up lots of your insights and your messages then.
And do pre-order the Swinging Christie's book. Very important.
We're going to do some edits on it later,
We are, indeed.
It's coming. Yeah.
And, of course, do stay subscribed to the Swinging Christie's feed because we're still releasing episodes there every month. And do rate, review, and subscribe. You can get in touch with us on Instagram at Christie_time. Our Blue Sky account is christietime.com, which is also our website. You can find us on YouTube at Westmapod, and of course there's at the Swinging Christies. You can email christietimeprod@gmail.com. Gray's website is grayrobertbrown.wixsite.com/grayrobertbrown. My Instagram is at Dr. Mark Aldridge, and you can find me on Blue Sky at markaldridge.info, which is also my website address.
Westma bye, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to go and Westma eat.
Westma lunch. Oh, my God.
Westma Mexican.
Yeah.
Yay.
Thanks for listening. Westmapod is a Christie Time project by Dr. Mark Aldridge and Gray Robert Brown. This episode was recorded in Southampton on the 19th of April 2026. Our artwork is designed by Tom Double and our music is by Dar Golan.
Agatha Christie did make changes. That's Gray's stomach crumbling because they're getting
pick
closer.
up.
Yeah,
It does pick up on the mics at work, but I think this one's quite more directional.
much more directional. Yeah. So
It sounded like this if you didn't hear it. I want lunch.
you will get lunch in 38 minutes.
Okay.
I've got a table booked. So